Again, this is one area that's been excavated, which means that if we excavate on this side and beyond it, we should find what? More or less the same type of idea, more. So this is just one of the early neighborhoods of the upper city of Tsipori, which is predominantly, these were homes, although we do in the residential square, that's a floor of a wine press. There are about 4 or 5 other presses that were found within this neighborhood. Okay. Another thing, and you can see, not in every house, but are like that pinkish thing over there, and over here, there's one here with steps. It looked like very in Jewish that we saw. With, who else was there with you? Ariel. Right, it's not, Oren was not available this year. Okay, what do we have here? We have a neighborhood street here. We have a side street right over. You go into a side street. Mishnah. Remember the Mishnah that Rabbi Judah the Prince wrote? It describes what it looks like. They have a side. Off of the side street is a courtyard of a number of houses. Example of what things look like in the Mishnah, but it can be even more specific than that, because if the Mishnah is using examples, what examples is it using? What's next door? So this is the actual thing. Now, we see that in some cases. Let's say the laws of Shabbat. It tells you about are aqueducts considered a separate domain or the same domain as Shabbat? And it uses the aqueduct of Tzipori as one of the examples. Right now, our importance is not the actual law. That we can get into. It's a bit more complicated for now. But what we have to understand is when we use, and we're going to do this again when we get to the market down below, this is what a city would look like in the background of, or a village or a neighborhood in the background of the Mishnah in the 2nd century. What we're looking at now has evidence that it predates Judah the Prince, and it goes afterwards. And the question then becomes, if we find a mikvah in about every other house, were these mikvaot built during the Second Temple period and then went out of use because they stopped following the strict laws of ritual purity, as after the temple these things became less and less common? Okay, that's one possibility. Another possibility, these aren't mikvah at all. What are they? Bathtubs. Hanan Eshel says most of these are just bathtubs. So maybe it's just, they look like mikvah because that's the way things look like at that time. Another possibility, and this is a possibility that I'm going to need to add more information in order for it to be substantiated, is that after the destruction of the temple, we have a concentration of houses, of people that continue to follow the strict rules of ritual purity, maintaining ritual purity, having mikvaot in their houses for at least a few centuries after the Second Temple is destroyed. Now, are these common people? Are these priests? Is it something that disappeared and later came back as a renaissance? Those are all open questions, and I will give you things to think about as we go through the different sites, not just here, but other sites there. Now, there is a strand that you see through scholarship. I mentioned it briefly, but here's one of the places where it came up in the discussion. You have people that claim that there was a difference between the type of Judaism that you find in the Galilee and the type of Judaism you find in Jerusalem. The type of Jerusalem was rabbinic and therefore in some way stained by the new ideas of the rabbis. The Galilee preserved some older, more pure strand. And these are predominantly Christian scholars that are trying to say that Jesus came out of something different than the original rabbinic. Let's just say that most scholars believe that this is extremely similar to the same things that we're finding in Jerusalem, at least from the perspective of the material culture. That doesn't exactly mean that there weren't people that had different types of ideas. It just means you can't prove it from the archaeology, at least from what we know right now. Yeah. Stone dishes have been found. That's one of the things that I'm going to talk about. That has to do with what I found in the farmhouse that we thought was the Whippodrome. Exactly. Yes.
How do we know that's a wine press?
That's what wine presses look like. We've seen hundreds of wine presses in other places, and that's the floor. We'll see a number of them, and we'll try to explain. The wine press has a large floor, a square floor for the pressing of it, and then on the sides, the receptacle areas of where the wine will spill into, and we're going to see them in a number of other sites